So spread spectrum modulation, as the name suggests, spread spectrum. So that means we are talking about spreading the signal in frequency domain. So which signal I'll be spreading? A modulated signal. So I can use this spread spectrum modulation in conjunction with a standardized form of modulation technique we have seen. Assume a BPSK modulation signal, modulated signal, that is binary phase shift keying modulated signal. I can use this spread spectrum in conjunction with BPSK and thereby spreading the signal in frequency domain. So when we already have single carrier modulation techniques, whatever we have seen so far, so what's the requirement of this spread spectrum modulation all of a sudden, and why are we discussing? What is the necessity of this spread spectrum modulation? Okay. So we'll go to the significance and what is the primary advantage of using the spread spectrum modulation. Now, as the name suggests, spread spectrum, we are increasing the bandwidth of the signal. We are spreading the signal in frequency domain. That means what are we doing? We are increasing the bandwidth of the signal. So whatever is the minimum bandwidth required to transmit a signal, now it is a bigger value. So we are using a bandwidth which is more than, we are spreading a signal over a bandwidth which value is much more than the bandwidth of the original signal, which could have been done in a general modulation technique. Then why do we require a spread spectrum then? When we are saying that we are spreading, we are increasing the bandwidth, and we already know that bandwidth is a scarce resource. We cannot waste upon bandwidth. We have to transmit maximum information in minimum bandwidth. Then what is the necessity of this spreading procedure or this particular technique? This particular technique is used to combat the interference which is happening from adjacent users in a situation. So the primary advantage of a spread spectrum modulation is its ability to reject interference. That is the main key point here. So what is the advantage of a spread spectrum modulation? The spread spectrum modulation has the ability to reject interference. Okay, so this interference which I'm talking about here, it can be an unintentional interference or it can be an intentional interference. Intentional interference example is a jamming. Now sometimes we put a jammer circuit to jam certain frequencies, certain bandwidth. Okay, so that is an intentional thing done, whereas the interference can be unintentional also from adjacent users. Okay, so this spread spectrum modulation is a very key technique in wireless communication, and we have different types of spread spectrum modulation. And one of the popularly modulation or the multiple access technique which uses spread spectrum modulation is CDMA, code division multiple access, which was used in earlier, if you remember, Reliance handsets came with without SIM. Do you remember those phone sets without SIM or the CDMA networks? Reliance CDMA networks that were launched. So the basic feature of a code division multiple access technique is there is no use of subscriber identity module. SIM is not required. Only the handset will do, because the technique there is CDMA, which again is based on your spread spectrum modulation. But if you look at our GSM service, which is as on today we are using, whether it is UMTS or you call it as long-term evolution or LTE advanced, and we are talking about 5G also. So all these are built on the legacy of GSM, and GSM uses time division multiple access in contrast to CDMA, right? So a vivid picture of this will be definitely covered in 7th semester subject wireless communication. But as at this point, I want to just hint at that thing that a spread spectrum modulation is a key technique which is used in code division multiple access technique. And why do we require spread spectrum modulation? To combat interference, whether it is intentional or unintentional in nature, whatever be the form. But the main aim of a spread spectrum modulation is to combat or reject interference. Okay. So with that, we'll start discussing about spread spectrum modulation, how it happens, how it takes place, how the process of spread spectrum modulation is accomplished, and so on. Okay. So let us first look at what is the definition of a spread spectrum modulation technique. Now the definition says spread spectrum is a means of transmission in which the data of interest is my modulating signal. Okay, the original signal or the message carrying signal or modulating signal. the data of interest occupies a bandwidth in excess of the minimum bandwidth necessary to send the data. That means whatever is the minimum bandwidth requirement, okay, we are actually increasing the bandwidth. We are transmitting the signal with the bandwidth which is excess of the minimum bandwidth, or which is much more than the minimum bandwidth. This happens because we are spreading the data in frequency domain. So spread spectrum is spreading the data in frequency domain. What is the second step or second part of the definition? The second part of the definition says that the spread spectrum spreading is accomplished before transmission through the use of a code. This is very, very important. So how the spreading procedure is done? The spreading procedure is accomplished by the use of a code that is independent of the data sequence. That means we are using a different code for spreading the data. So we have an input data sequence. I want to do spread spectrum modulation. So what essentially I am doing is I am spreading the given data using a different code, okay? And I am using the same code in the receiver unit also, in the receiver side also, to despread the received signal so that I can recover the original data. So the phenomenon which is happening at the transmitter is called spreading. The phenomenon which is happening at the receiver is called despreading. And the spreading and despreading are achieved through the use of a single code. I don't know the name of the code as of now, but we will see what is this code called. Okay. So using a single code, I am spreading at the transmitter, and the same code I'm using at the receiver to despread. So spreading and despreading we are doing, and this process of spreading and despreading is done in order to reject the interference, whether it may be of intentional form or unintentional form. Okay. Now, what are the basic uses of spread spectrum? What are the basic uses of spread spectrum? Used to provide multipath rejection in a ground-based mobile radio environment. So basically, one of the main advantages or uses of spread spectrum is in mobile communication or wireless communication. When I talk about multipath propagation, there are multiple paths in which the signal propagates and reaches at the receiver, and whichever path is of interest, we are interested in rejecting the signal coming from other paths, because we define our path of interest. So in such kind of wireless communication environment or radio environment, we find application of spread spectrum, as I mentioned earlier also, and also used in multiple access techniques or multiple access communication. Example is CDMA, code division multiple access, is the technique in which we are using the spread spectrum modulation. So the definition of spread spectrum and the necessity, why are we going for spread spectrum, is it clear? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So spread spectrum, essentially spreading the input data in frequency domain. We are increasing the bandwidth of the signal. And how are we able to accomplish this? By the use of a code. Okay. And the same code is used at the transmitter and receiver. The procedure done in the input side or transmitter side is called spreading, and the procedure done at the receiver side is called despreading. So as of now, we know this much about the spread spectrum modulation, right? Now, next comes pseudo noise sequences. So what is this pseudo noise sequences? This code I was talking about, right? I told the same code is used at the transmitter as well as receiver. Now I am naming that code, or I'm calling that code as a pseudo noise sequence. Or in some places, you will also see it is called as a pseudo random sequence, one or the same. Okay. So PN sequence, very well known as PN sequence. So this code is called a PN sequence, which is used for spreading. Same code is used at the receiver for despreading. Okay. So what is the definition of a PN sequence then? A PN sequence is defined as coded sequence of ones and zeros with certain autocorrelation properties. We will see the properties one by one with proof. And the class of sequences used in spread spectrum communication is periodic. So first thing is we got to know that the pseudo noise sequence or PN sequence consists of ones and zeros. The second thing what we saw is that the PN sequence is periodic in nature. I have underlined and highlighted here. So a PN sequence is periodic in nature. It can be aperiodic also. Okay. So note below here, it can be aperiodic also for certain applications. But when I constrained my talk about the spread spectrum over here, I will be talking that it is periodic. But we can also generate aperiodic PN sequences. Okay. But that is not a discussion over here. So the sequence which I will be using for the spread spectrum modulation will be essentially periodic in nature. So it is periodic. And the third thing is, what is the length of this particular code, or what is the length of this sequence, PN sequence? So the maximum length sequence, okay, it is a kind of cyclic code which represents the PN sequence, and we can define what is the value of, or what is the length of this PN sequence in the subsequent discussion. Okay, so we can generate a maximum sequence length sequence or a PN sequence, and we will see how to generate such a PN sequence. So number one, the code which is used for spreading and dispreading is called a PN sequence, or a pseudo noise sequence, or pseudo random sequence. Point number two, it is periodic in nature for our discussion here. Point number three, we can determine or we can decide upon what would be the length of this particular PN sequence. Based on that, we are going to design or generate a circuit which can give us a definite length of this sequence or this code. So we look at the circuit which generates this particular code. Okay. So the PN sequences have long periods and can be implemented using a linear feedback shift resistor, LFSR. You could have seen this in your digital electronics circuits also, those subjects we have discussed about linear feedback shift resistor circuits. So the generation of PN sequence is done through a linear feedback shift resistor, LFSR. Okay, and if you look at this, it consists of the three stages here. So shift resistor 1, 2, and 3. So these are essentially flip-flops. Okay, and okay, there is feedback which is again fed back to this. That's how it is known as linear feedback. Okay, so there is a feedback mechanism where the output is fed back to the input. Why it is called a linear? A shift register unit is called linear when in the feedback path, you have only XOR or modulo 2 operators there, or you do modulo 2 additions in the feedback path, then it is called, the shift register is called linear. Okay, so the term linear comes from the definition that in the feedback path you will have only modulo 2 or the XOR operation done, and feedback is there and shifting will obviously happen, and you can see the simultaneous clock being given. So these are all synchronous. The single clock is given to all the flip-flops here, and we are deriving the output. Okay, now let's say this the value of the bit over here is S0, or the state of the input to the shift register 1 is S0. Let's say the output of the shift register 1 is S1. Output of shift register 2 is S2. By mistake it's written S3 here, it is S2. And let the output of the shift register 3 is S3. Okay, so we have this S0 input to the shift register 1, S1 output of 1 and input to 2, and output of shift register 2 is S2, which is input to 3, and the output of shift register 3 is S3. Right, now let me assume that the initial state for this particular linear feedback shift resistor is 1, 0, 0. So what's my initial state I'm starting? I've assumed that let my initial state be 1, 0, 0. So content of this resistor is 1, content of shift resistor 2 is 0, and shift resistor 3 is 0. So 1, 0, 0. Now when a clock pulse is given, now what will happen? One bit gets shifted. So before that, so here 1, 0, 0. So this one is fed to this XOR operator, and this output, that is S3, is also fed to other input of the XOR. So this is 1, 0, 0. So essentially 1 comes from here and 0 comes from here. So 1 and 0 is input to the XOR. So XOR output is 1. And that 1 comes over here now. So the earlier one which was here is shifted now here. The earlier 0 which was here is shifted over here for this clock pulse. And this next state is 1, 1, 0. Right? For the next clock pulse, again we can determine the state of the linear shift resistor. Okay, so if there are three number of shift resistors as is seen in this diagram, we have three number of flip flops or three number of shift resistors. So if small n is the number of shift resistor, so what is your length of the PN sequence? The length of the PN sequence is 2 to the power n minus whole minus 1. So 2 to the power n. So small n is 3. There are three shift resistors in the diagram. So 2 to the power 3 is 8. 8 minus 1 is 7. So the length of the PN sequence will be 7, which keeps on repeating because I told you one of the property of the PN sequence is it is periodic in nature. So this 777 it keeps on repeating, and one PN sequence length, if you see the maximum length of the PN sequence is 7 in this case. Okay, so having from the initial state, if I start from 100, I can write down what will happen to the different states when a clock signal comes in. Okay, so I mentioned here if there are n number of flip-flops or n number of stages, so the length of your PN sequence is how much? 2 to the power small n minus 1. This is called the maximum, or such a PN sequence which is defined exactly this value 2 to the power n minus 1 is called a maximum length sequence or M sequence. You can have a sequence which is slightly less than this also, but the maximum length will be 2 to the power n minus 1. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, what about others?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it clear till this point?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we have now understood what is a PN sequence and how it is generated. It is generated by using a linear feedback shift resistor, and the maximum length of the PN sequence is defined by the number of stages present in the LFSR, small n, that is the number of flip-flops, or number of and the maximum length of the PN sequence is 2 to the power n minus of 1. So this is the understanding about the PN sequence as of now. Okay, and the same example what I have discussed, this diagram, in this diagram the explanation is over here. Okay, this is the example. So we started with what was the initial state 100, and with each clock pulse we have got the next state is 110, the next state will be 011. You can just verify this how we are getting the state change for per clock input. Okay, and this we know that the PN sequence is periodic, so it will repeat itself after the length of 7. So 2 to the power 3 minus 1, 8 minus 1 is 7. So the length, maximum length of the PN sequence is 7. It gets repeated after every 7 bits. Okay, so these are called the PN codes. Right. Now there are very important certain properties of PN sequence which needs to be satisfied. That means any sequence cannot be called a PN sequence. The sequence has to satisfy certain properties, and if a sequence satisfies few properties, then we can call it as a pseudo noise sequence. So what are the properties? There are three properties. First one is the balance property, second one is run length property, and the third one is called autocorrelation property. Okay, so if a PN sequence satisfies all the three properties, then it is called a pseudo noise sequence. If it satisfies one or two of the three, then it is not called a pseudo noise sequence. So any of the pseudo noise sequence should be able to set or must satisfy all the three properties. Okay, this is a very, very important question from exam point of view, where you can get a question, I mean you can get a sequence and you will be asked to test the properties, or you can be asked to list the properties or prove it with an example. Either of the thing is possible. A sequence can be given to you and you have to test the properties on it, or you can be asked to define the properties with an example or illustrate the three properties with an example. Okay, so the PN sequence, the first property is called balance property. So what is a balance property? Let us see. What is the definition of balance property? The balance property defines that in each period of the sequence, the number of binary ones differ from the number of binary zeros by at most one digit. That means given the length of PN sequence, the number, if you take one period, and you know that PN sequence is periodic for our discussion, so PN sequence repeats itself after one period. So given one period, in one period of the PN sequence, the number of ones present in the code will be greater than the number of zeros present in the code by 1. Okay. Now consider the output of the LFSR as this particular. How many bits are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, right? 15. So what would be the number of flip-flop stages which would have been used in the design of the LFSR? My PN sequence length for this example is 15. So PN sequence length is 15. What's the formula for PN sequence length? 2 to the power n minus 1, right? What is the length of the PN sequence maximum? 2 to the power n minus 1. So if it is 2 to the power 4, 2 to the power 4 is 16, 16 minus 1 is 15. So n is equal to how much? The number of flip-flops is 4, right? So this so this is the PN sequence. This is one period of the PN sequence, and length of this is 15, which is obtained as 2 to the power n minus 1, that is 2 to the power 4 minus 1, 16 minus 1, which is 15, right? So 4 shift resistors or flip-flops would be used in the LFSR to give us an output of 15 bits, length of the PN sequence. Now count the number of ones. How many ones are there in this period? In this 15 bits, how many ones are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many zeros are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So is the number of ones greater than the number of zeros by 1? The number of ones present in this period is 8, and the number of zeros present in this 15 bits is 7. So is the number of ones greater than the number of zeros present by 1?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
This satisfies the balance condition. This is what is called balance condition. So what is the balance property? The balance property states that the number of ones will be greater than the number of zeros by 1 in a given period of, or in each period of the PN sequence. So in each period of the sequence, if the number of binary ones is greater than the number of binary zeros by 1 digit, then we call it as what? The balance, we say that the balance property is satisfied. Okay. Now let us move to the next property, which is called the run length property. Okay. So this is run length property. The same sequence is used. Okay. Same 15 bits PN sequence. The same bits, the same for the same sequence, we have to now test the run length property. As I mentioned, all the 3 properties should be satisfied for the sequence to be called as PN sequence. Okay. Now, what is the definition of the second property? Second property defines that among the runs of ones and zeros in each period, it is desirable that about 1/2 of the runs of each type is of length 1, about 1/4 are of length 2, and 1/4 are of length 2, and 1/8 are of length 3, and so on. Okay. Consider the output of the shift register. This is the output shift register. How to define the number of runs? How to compute the number of runs? What is the number of bits present here? 15, right? And 15 is 2 to the power n minus 1. That's how we obtained with n equal to 4. So number of runs will be 2 to the power n minus 1 divided by 2, right? So number of runs will be how much? The length of the PN sequence, maximum length, that is 2 to the power n whole minus 1 divided by 2. Now 2 to the power n minus 1 is 15 because n is 4. So 16 minus 1 is 15. There are 15 bits present in the output, so we can make out. So in one period, there are 15 bits. The length of the PN sequence is, so 2 to the power n minus 1 is 15. 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. I'll take the next number, whole number. So how much is the number of runs? So the number of runs is 8. You understood how to calculate the number of runs given the length of the PN sequence. You have to, maximum length of the PN sequence is 2 to the power n minus 1. So divide the maximum length of the PN sequence by 2. That will give you the number of runs. You have to take the next number. In this case, the maximum length of the PN sequence is 15. There are 15 bits present here. So 15 divided by 2, okay, 15 divided by 2, which will come 7.5. I'm taking the next integer, that is 8. So my number of runs is 8. Fine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, the property says that it is desirable to have 1/2 of the runs each of length 1. What is 1/2 of number of runs? What is 1/2 of 8? Excuse me. What is 1/2 of 8? 4. 1/2. 1/2 of the number of runs. For this example, number of runs is 8. We computed. How to compute the number of runs? The maximum length of the shift resistor, 2 to the power n minus 1 divided by 2. That's how we have to compute the number of runs. So 2 to the power n minus 1 is 15. 15 divided by 2, 7.5. Next number is 8. So number of runs is 8. Now, 1/2 of the number of runs is 1/2 of 8. 1/2 of 8 is 8/2, that's equal to 4. That means that should be of length, the are of length 1. That means 4 ones should be there together in the code. Run of 1. 1, next number is 1, next number is also 1, next number is 1. After that, there is no bit, but there are continuous how many ones? Continuously how many ones? Here shown in pink color. Continuously how many ones? 4 ones. 4 ones. And this 4 is nothing but 1/2 of 8. 1/1/2 of the number of runs. 1/2 of 8 is 4. Okay. And you have 4 length. Okay. 1 for the length of 4. That means 1 is repeating 4 times without any change of bit is 0. Without any change of bit over here. Suppose, let's say, for example, if this bit is 0, so this will be 1 0 1 1. Can I say that it is a run of ones of length 4? No. When I say run of ones means all should be 1. So what is the run for ones over here? What is the length of run of ones? All ones together, how many ones are there? 4 ones. And that is nothing but 1/2 of 8. So 1/2 of 8 is 4. So we have ones of length 4. Next, 1/4 of length 2. 1/4 of length 2. That means 1/4 of number of runs. 1/4 of 8 is how much? 2, right? So 1/4 of 8 is 2. So now you see 2 is there, 2 zeros are there. Yes or no? 2 zeros are there together. 2 ones are there together. Yes. So under that write down 2. Here also 2. Anywhere 2 else is there? No. So 1/4 of the length should be 2. So total length is 15. Number of runs is 8. 1/4 of 8 is 2. So 2 times of length 2 or run 2, you will have the property being satisfied. Next is 1/8 of the number of runs should be of length 3 and so on. What is 1/8 of 8? 1/8 of 8 is 1. So that means there is one combination where there is a run of what? Length 3. 3 zeros are there together. If at all there is, instead of 3 zeros, you would have 3 ones, then also the property is satisfied. But if you have, in this particular thing, if you have some 3 more ones over here, somewhere here, okay, then the property will not be satisfied. You got the point? So the property, second run length property says that you will have 1/2 of the number of runs of length 1, 1/4 of the number of runs of length 2, and 1/8 of the number of runs of length 3 and so on. If this property is satisfied, then we say that the run length property is satisfied. What you need to do is see here. First 3, if I start, this is my sequence given, how to do it. 3 zeros are there together. I can just underline below that and I can write down 3. What is my next bit? 1. After 1, there is no 1. So there is no repetition. Okay. So length is only 1. Only 1 bit. There is no consecutive 1 there. No consecutive ones there. So this is 1 bit. So I can write below. I can write down only 1. The next bit is 0. The next bit is 0. So there is a repetition. There is a run length of 0 for 2 times. So under that, underline and write down 2. Now the next bit after 0 changes to 1. After that also one more 1 is there. So what is, but after this one 0 is there. So continuous run is 2 times, for length is 2. So can write down 2. This is single bit because after that 1. So this is 1. this one after that is 0, so this is also length 1. This 0 after that bit is 1, so this length of this bit is also 1. Now after this 1 there is one more 1, 1, 1. There are 4 ones consecutively. So I'll put an underline and write down 4. So 1 by 2 of number of runs is 4. So I have what 1/2. Yeah, 1 by 2 of 1/2 of 8. So 1 by 2 of 8 is 4. So I have 4. Okay. Then I have 1/4 of length 2. So 1, 2. And then I have 1/8 of length 3. So that is these 3 zeros. So my run length property is satisfied. My run length property is satisfied. Any doubts here? Any doubts?
No.
Hello? Any doubts in
No,
the
ma'am.
how to test the run length property? You can ask me here. Okay, then I'll move to the next property, which is called the third property, or the autocorrelation property. Okay, so I told you any sequence which satisfies all the 3 properties is called a PN sequence. We first tested the balance property, then we tested the run length property, and the third one is autocorrelation property. So what's the definition of autocorrelation property? We'll see. Autocorrelation function of a maximum length sequence is periodic and binary valued. Autocorrelation sequence of a binary sequence in polar form is given by this. This is a generalized form of when you have any discrete sequence, binary sequence of ones and zeros, we can define the autocorrelation function as capital R C of K. K is the lag. I told you autocorrelation function is always a function of the time lag. So RC of K is equal to 1 divided by capital N. Capital N here is the length of the PN sequence. Okay, length of the PN sequence. Summation small n varies from 1 to capital N. C suffix n and Cn minus K. So it is shifted, right? So autocorrelation function, same sequence shifted by K units. So autocorrelation function is the function of time domain. In integration, we were doing the same thing, right? X of tau, h of t minus tau, right? So here, in case of binary thing, discrete thing, the integration is replaced by the sum term. So this is the autocorrelation function defined in discrete domain. Okay, and where capital N is the length of the sequence. And autocorrelation, as I told you, it is the time lag, or it is usually called the lag of the autocorrelation function. Now it says that autocorrelation function RC of K will have value 1 if the value of K is integral multiples of the period, and the value of the autocorrelation function will be equal to minus of 1 by n when the value of this K, or the lag, is not equal to some integral multiple of capital N, where this is L. L is an integer here. So when it is integral multiples of the period, the value of the autocorrelation function is how much? 1. When the value of this lag is not equal to integral multiples of the period, the autocorrelation function value is minus 1 by n. So that's what we are going to prove. So what is the value of autocorrelation function when the lag is not an integral multiple of the period? So not necessarily the lag will be integral multiple of period. So in usual cases, if it exactly matches with the that means if the lag is also periodic with respect to the sequence, then the value of autocorrelation function will be equal to 1. If the lag is not equal to integral multiples of the period, then the value of the autocorrelation function will be minus 1 by n. That's what we are going to test for the same sequence, whatever we have considered, that 000, 1, 00, 11, the same sequence. We have tested the balance property, and then we tested the run length property, and now we are going to look at the autocorrelation property, right? So what you do is, whatever is the sequence written, just do one shift of the sequence and write down below. Okay, so after doing one shift, that means this last one you bring over here at the